the stage to Mr. Brad Boyson, who will lead this session. And thank you so very much, Brad, to be back with us again. Appreciate your support.
Oh, my pleasure, Sri. Thank you for having me. Thank you for all of the work you and Helen have done so far. These are some really amazing sessions and impressive group of speakers.
Excellent. Take it away, Brad. Go ahead.
Okay. Thank you. So welcome everyone. I'm joining you from Dubai in the United Arab Emirates, and I have a distinguished panel here, and our topic is leadership, organization, culture, and effectiveness. And I think everyone would agree that is a significantly large topic and challenging topic. So I know our panelists are up to the challenge, but Sri gave a brief introduction for everyone, and I do want to give everyone a chance to just introduce themselves, and maybe if I can ask as well, just a short poll question, almost a yes or no, because I know we are, challenged for time, and we have a lot that we want to cover. So I'm going to ask each one of my panelists to just introduce themselves and answer the question: does leadership affect organization culture? We were listening to the previous panel, and there was some discussion about the changing nature of leadership. So maybe, Temi, if I can start with you, just introduction and your thoughts on, does leadership affect organization culture?
Hi, everyone. Again, I would also like to say good thank you to Impact Global, to Ashish, to Alan. I think this is really wonderful. I've always been invited by Ashish to a lot of these things, and I feel like it's a good way to garner knowledge across the different diversities and cultures that we meet. And I'm very honored to be here, and I just wanted to say that brief thank you for inviting me on board. So my name is Temi Tokwe Aziz. Oftenly, it's easier to just call me Temi for most people. And I manage people and culture at HSC for PEG Africa. So PEG Africa is a pay-as-you-go solar service for the underprivileged within Africa. So we offer them the access to energy while they have the opportunity to pay financially in bits to be able to support the agriculture and stuff like that. And currently we are in 4 markets, and hopefully we plan to expand, but probably that might not happen with the situation of COVID and all of that. My perception or my perspective to the topic leadership, organizational culture and effectiveness is in a place where you have great leaders, you find that they're able to connect employees to purpose, because they connect them to purpose when they themselves exemplify what the values of the organization is or are. What I mean by that is simply like, for instance, even during these COVID times, because of the kind of customers we serve, they are in the rural areas, they're in bushes, they're in places that typically people would never want to go to. You still find that the leaders, the country directors, the senior middle management teams within the organization have scheduled days where they actually go into these vicinities to actually meet with these customers, trudging through the mud and stuff like that. And this includes HR and everybody else. So that way you're giving purpose to the people that you lead, that they're not doing this alone, but you're doing this and exemplifying that. Another thing is when you do have great leaders, they're able to connect to the accomplishment. And this is why we have the kind of monthly meets that we have, where we're able to say this is where the goals we set up for ourselves, this is where we are, this is what we need to do better, this is what this department is doing, and everybody is finding that connection in terms of how we're able to set objectives.
Good. Well, thank you. And I'm as Sri mentioned, it's impressive the global participation. We've got Kenya, and now we have Emmanuel in Nigeria. If you could introduce yourself.
Okay.
Maybe unmute.
Yeah, I'm muted. Good morning, everyone. I hope you can all hear me clearly.
Yes.
So I want to thank Impact Global for the opportunity to speak at this particular event. So for me, as you all know, my name is Emmanuel Michael. I'm based in Nigeria, and I work for Organisational in Nigeria. So I'm with the country head of human capital. So I oversee the people processes for the group here in Nigeria. So in addition to that, I also host a program, a platform which I call HR with EM. So basically, I use that platform to share career development tips and as well as employee experience practices. So that's basically what I do on that space. So with regard to the importance of leadership in an organization and how it impacts the organization's effectiveness. So what I've seen is that the way the people in an organization behave and how they carry out their job or their work squarely lies on what they see from the leader. So the leader actually sets the tone, okay? If the tone from the leader is conflicting with what he is saying, you will discover that people will see this leader as a hypocrite, someone not to be trusted, and as a result, they will keep doing the opposite thing. And then the leader is wondering, why is it that I keep asking my people to do things in a certain way and they're doing the opposite? But he or she forgets that what he is projecting, the perception that the people have of that particular leader, is not consistent with the values that he or she wants the people in the organization to live. So leaders need to be aware of what sort of messaging they're communicating, by their actions, by what they do, and not just what they say. Okay? So if they say something and they do something differently, it's going to impact that organization. So even if you take, say, in a family, you're growing up, you're bringing up little children, and you keep telling them, don't do this, don't do that. But you keep saying, don't do this, and they see that they are mommy doing those things that you are asking them not to do. When you are not around, they begin to behave that way. So that is the same thing that applies in organization. When the leader is not around, they just go ahead and do those things that they lead, and then they start mimicking the leader. Okay, they mimic the leader and say, this is what the leader will do in such a situation, and then you are baffled. Things are not moving the way we want them to do. So leaders need to begin to start examining themselves in order to understand why their organization and the people in the organization are behaving the way they are behaving. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Emmanuel. And that prompts something I'm sure we'll come back to very shortly. So maybe Anil, if you could introduce yourself and just a brief cover of the leadership impacting organization culture.
Sure, Brian. First of all, big hello to all the participants who have glued on to this panel, and thanks a ton to Impact Global for having me here and connecting me to all wonderful people from across different geographies. Now, I'm not an engineer. Emmanuel introduced he is an engineer, but I'm not an engineer. I'm a hardcore HR practitioner, and it's been 23 years I've been practicing all across different sectors. And in my current role of a CHRO, I'm accountable for driving the strategic HR agenda, starting from how do we hire best of the talent, how do we retain them, how do we develop them, and how do we also drive the entire peripheral work all around culture, competences, policies, and other stuff like that. Now, Brad has asked us one statement. Do we believe that in the entire culture transformation journey, leaders play an effective role? Could not agree more to what Emmanuel said. Definitely leaders, they set the tone, but when it is a culture transformation, rank and file hardly matters. Everybody, irrespective of their positions, need to contribute if they want the culture transformation to be successful. What it means is everybody in their every day of work life, they need to start demonstrating those behavior. So what we call is every day and in each and every way, you need to live those values. Then if together everybody does that, then probably the success story would be much better, and we can actually set example for others to follow. That's where I will stop for the time being. Brad, over to you.
Yes. Thank you, Neil. And yes, culture is certainly something you're passionate about, and we'll come back to that shortly. So maybe Nanda next, introduction. Are you on mute, Nanda?
Hi, good afternoon, good morning, and good evening, depending on where you have logged in from. Nice to be here with all of you, and it's a great platform to network. My name is Nanda, and roughly about 35 years back, I stumbled into HR purely by accident. And I can tell you that I've loved every minute. And now I think I'm really a thoroughbred HR person, though I did not get into it by choice. Over the years, if I look at my career across many companies, both within India and outside of India, I mean, depending on the size, scale, and the length of the organization, I think you have certain things that get formed over time. But clearly, there is also the very important role that a leader brings in. Except that if there is a change of leadership and the new person comes into a culture which is very strong, it takes a little time for the leader to assimilate and then start making that difference. Whereas in smaller organizations, the change is probably far more rapid and far more instantaneous compared to large organizations. So I've had the privilege of working with some remarkable leaders who have really been able to shape organizations and shape the way they think. I've also worked with a few of them who were absolutely misfits in the organizations, and they just could not, get into what they needed to do. And, it became a HR challenge for us to deal with. How do you make this transformational change happening? So quick and summary of the answer is yes, culture is important from an organizational point of view. Leaders do play a role, but it is not the same cookie cutter across organizations. That's the way I would put it. Thank you, Brad.
Thank you, Nanda. Wonderful. And Kamal?
Hi, everyone. Hope I'm audible to everybody.
Yes.
Great. Thanks, Brad. So first of all, thanks to Impact Global for putting this event, this really great event together, and for inviting me to be a part of the event as well. Happy to be here. A little bit about myself. I have about a decade of experience in the HR domain. Have worked with various organizations like Nokia, like Microsoft, with Diageo, and I'm currently heading HR for all of APAC, which includes India, ANZ, Japan, Korea, Southeast Asia as well. And so day in and day out, I see how leadership can be very different depending on the culture, depending on the stage that a particular sub-organization is a part of, and goes to talk about what's the kind of role that leadership does play, which can be very different from one place to another. I have played multiple roles in about a decade of that experience, but primarily in the employee relations space and the HR business partnering space. Looking at the question that Brad shared with us, what's the role that leadership does play in culture? I think when I think about leaders, we have to remember that strategies are not implemented by CEOs and top executives. They're actually implemented by the many people in the organization who choose to, on a daily basis, take actions that either support what the top management wants to do or can choose to undermine it. And that's where I think leaders can play a very crucial role in accelerating the journey that the organization is on. And that means either sort of bringing and rallying people together with a sense of purpose that accelerates what the organization wants to achieve. And that's where I feel that leaders play an extremely important role in driving the culture of the organization, which is often in the implicit behaviors than the explicit conversations.
Very well said. And I love the diversity of thought leadership on this panel so far. I'm thrilled by that. So if we look at the title of our discussion, our panel, there's sort of two broad categories: leadership and organization culture, and how those relate is the effectiveness question. Looking at the various members of our panel's background, I've prepared some questions based on some feedback that you've given me. And I'm going to come back to Nanda, if I can, and start with leadership. So I'm going to ask a few leadership questions and then probably come back to culture and summarize things at the end. But Nanda, in a very sort of direct way, What is the one thing leaders should start doing? And what is something perhaps that they should stop doing to be more effective?
Yeah, thanks, Brad. I'm probably going to talk out of my own, experiences of having worked with
Please.
leaders in terms of. I think one thing that, especially I'm trying to relate it to the current context in which the world is going through. I think it's very important for all leaders to start being more mindful of the respective teams. I think it's a very, very important requirement today because the level of concerns that people have, the sort of issues that they face is a very unprecedented time. And we have to also accept the reality that in most places, homes are not designed to be offices, are not designed to be a workplace. That's a reality. So, to expect the same level of attention to work in a home situation which is completely unprepared for is not going to be easy. And I think it's a very, very important thing for leaders to be extremely mindful about the current situation and the sort of situation that the individual employee may be facing. And when I say leaders, I really talk about leadership at all levels, not just at the senior most leadership of the company, but to every employee, the immediate manager is also a leader. And therefore, it's important for them to play that particular role. The one thing that I think all leaders should stop doing in the current situation is to stop micromanaging. Because that's just not going to work in the current context. And it's very, very important to make sure that you trust the team, you give them what they need to do, but you're available in case they run into a problem or a difficulty. But important thing is to really tell them that they are capable of doing it. They will have to adjust and adapt to the situation. And organization and the managers will support them in their endeavor. I think that's the confidence that they can give. Micromanagement of a remote team is definitely not going to be of any use. And it is only going to create more problems going forward. Thank you, Brad.
Yeah. No, thank you. Isn't that just so true? I mean, you look at how the work from home movement has disrupted, and it's such a cliche, but it is really what it is. And in terms of, I've heard in many panels that I've participated in and watched, this word of trust. If you don't trust your workforce, especially as it relates to management, micromanaging, and these other issues, it just is such, your culture is so exposed for its, I'll call it weaknesses. Maybe coming back to leadership, Kamal, if I can ask you a question, what is the role that leaders can play, and it ties into a bit what Nanda said, in terms of creating a culture of psychological safety where employees are feeling welcomed, inclusive, and just are able to contribute all of themselves to the work? How would you answer that question in these times?
Sure. I think the world we're living in today, I think we've moved from working from home to actually living at work. I was part of another, summit a couple of months back, and I had asked this question, and there was an overwhelming agreement that we're actually living at work. We're no longer working from home. And I think that's exactly where leadership today needs to look and feel very different than it has in the past. In the past, while psychological safety has been an important hallmark in how productive people are able to be when they come to the workplace, are they really able to bring their whole selves to work, and how does that translate to how effective and productive they are at work? I think today that's even more important. Today it's really front and center stage. And I believe that psychological safety in today's environment, where there is a lot of ambiguity, there's a lot of ambiguity when it comes to work that they're doing. There's a lot of ambiguity about the organization and where that's heading into. We've all seen those cases and examples where organizations have had to make difficult choices and decisions that have, in a very real way, impacted large number of people. And you have an ambiguity of, you don't know how the healthcare system or countries are dealing with some of the very real challenges that the environment poses externally. Amidst all of this ambiguity, leaders can play an extremely powerful role in really bringing stability and bringing that sense of psychological safety to employees in having open conversations. in being comfortable with being uncomfortable. To me, that's an extremely important stage of mental maturity that that an employee can be brought to, with the right steps being taken up by a leader. What that does to somebody who is working through this ambiguity is that it can mean the difference between feeling like I'm not sure about where life is heading versus I know I have people who got my back. I know that no matter what happens, there are people who've got my back. And I think in today's world, that is an extremely important emotional state for people to be in. Mental well-being is, something that's becoming a very active conversation. I think leaders no longer just have that responsibility of ensuring that at the workplace, they have that responsibility today of, and that power, not just the responsibility, and that power of creating that sense of emotion in people today much more than they've had that opportunity in the past. It also means that it's an opportunity for the organization to tap into the collective potential of people. Because when you feel that the organization has your back, that's when you're going to do the best work of your life. And I think that's where leaders can play an extremely important role in making people in enabling people to be the best version of themselves and how they want to view themselves.
Yeah, it's really changed the dynamic of work. We all, if you think about the traditional stereotype of office and work politics, and then, I love your expression, we're living at work right now. I'm going to think about that one deeply for a couple of days now. But it's a challenge to those of us who work in HR to do better and to be more human. And it is a genuine challenge. And I think a lot of us are up to that challenge. And I think some of us might prove that maybe this isn't the right type of work. The challenge is a bit daunting. I'm going to go to Emmanuel now. I know that in your introduction, Emmanuel, you mentioned or alluded to something about this idea of self-leadership. And, often when we think about leaders and leadership, it's sort of a competency or skill of directing others or inspiring others. But I've heard from other panels or panelists so far that this definition of leadership itself is changing. How would you address that concept or idea of self-leadership and understanding oneself? Emmanuel, are you in mute?
Okay, so thank you, Brad, for that question. So I would like to start by saying that the biggest leadership challenge that we will ever face is ourselves. Okay, and so if the biggest leadership challenge that we face is ourselves, it means there is need for us to understand ourselves. Okay, and how it impacts the effectiveness, the culture of the institution, and the effectiveness. Then I think the question we need to then ask ourselves is, what exactly is this self-leadership? What is self-leadership? Okay. So for me, self-leadership is having a situation whereby one is having a developed sense of who you really are. Who are you? Okay. What can you do? Okay. And then where are you going? So you need to be able to understand this, coupled with the ability to influence your communication, the way you talk, your emotions, and then your behaviors. Okay. That will help shape to get you to where you want to get to. So when we begin to understand what this self-leadership is all about, okay, and not just leadership in the sense of leading others, because the focus has always been, when you talk about leadership, you see that people have focused on how do we lead our team, how do we lead the business, how do we lead those that are following us. But little attention is paid to the fact that the person who is actually leading, it will either make or mar the whole process, or make or mar the whole organization, impact the fortunes of that particular organization. So there are 12 guidelines, okay? There are 12 specific guidelines that if you want to lead from within, that you need to begin to focus on. And this focus is on yourself. So the first one is for you to set goals, okay? There's need for you to set goals for your life, okay? Because once you've set your goals, And then there is the need for you to every day ask yourself daily, what are you doing to reach that particular goal? So if you don't have a goal for yourself and then you are beginning to set goals for others, it will impact how you lead others. So leading yourself. And then the second thing, which I alluded in my intro, is leading by example. So there's need for us to lead by example because our life, okay, is a message. So what we do in life serves as a message to others. What sort of message are we communicating? Is it tallying with what we are saying? Then there's the next thing for us to be fearless. You know, we tell our people we need to be resilient. When you as a leader, what are you showing? Are you exhibiting fear? Okay, are people perceiving that you are afraid of the situation in which we are in right now? Or are you taking the step to show that confidence, that boldness, okay, to lead everyone, to show the courage that is required to get the business? What you need to look at is, do you honor others? Do you honor others, or are you only there as a leader who wants all the accolades to come to you? Okay, if you want all the accolades to come to you, you will create a situation whereby because the people see that you want everything to go to you, then they begin to fall apart and leave things for you to do. Then as a leader, okay, when you become self-aware, you will discover that there is need for you to begin to embrace new ideas. Do you embrace new ideas? Do you embrace new opportunity? Or do you only see problems? When you find that we're in this particular situation of COVID-19, businesses are ought to move, do you see that as a problem? And then maybe your next line of action is to quit from the scene. Okay? Or do you see this as an opportunity to be able to recreate your business, to re-innovate your business, and then find new ways by which you can begin to grow the business in spite of the challenges that we have? Then there is need for you also as a leader who is self-aware to question everything. Okay? There's need for you to question everything. So the more you question, the more you learn. And the more you learn, the more you know. So if you don't question, you won't be able to learn something new. The situation that is going on is need for us to keep interrogating that situation. Then the other thing that is also key is integrity. Okay? There's need for us to do what is right and not what is easy. So the situation now might be very difficult and very hard, but what is our position? Are we looking for the easy way out, or are we looking for a way to do the right thing? Okay. Then there's need for us to find, you know, in this situation, even though things are not looking, everything is looking gloomy, we don't know where we're going. There's need for us to find the beauty and the good thing in this particular situation. You can see that this COVID-19, what it has done for most organizations is that it has helped to accelerate automation of their system, digitalization of the business. Businesses are beginning to come up with new models of how to run their operations. How do they move their operations online? For those who were not even thinking about having an online presence, this situation has brought about a situation whereby people begin to move to that particular space of saying, okay, let's have our business online. Then in terms of pessimism, are you a pessimistic person? A self-aware leader is one who is constantly rejecting any pessimistic idea. Okay, they are always there, seeing something positive in everything that is negative. And like we've said earlier, also, there's need for us to be the change we want to see. So you want to see a change in the organization, you need to show that example. You need to be that particular change. And then we've also seen sometimes the leaders that we have, I think that they know it all. They have nobody that they need to go to seek advice or to listen to. So there's need for leaders to begin to have people that they look up to, that they can also learn from. I know that they are not the only smart people in that particular organization. So when you become this self-aware and begin to lead yourself properly, it will help to ensure that you are able to drive the kind of culture that you want within the organization, and then it will begin to impact the fortunes of that particular organization. Then I think the last thing in this particular guideline is about care. So do you care for the people? because your people will only do more when they discover that you actually care for them. So you need to show that care. You need to connect with them. When you connect with them, it makes it easy for them to be able to give back to that particular organization. And in conclusion, I would like to say that when we self-leadership itself, okay, helps every organization, one, to helps the leaders in the organization to become self-aware, makes them to become more customer-driven. Okay, that's the impact, helps to become more customer-driven, and then also ensures cost effectiveness, innovative ideas, and ensure the organization is effective, especially when you begin to build stronger relationships because you understand yourself, you understand exactly what you do and how you do it, how it impacts, okay, the people that you work with. So this will help to ensure that you build an organization that is focused on serving the people, your customers, and then that in turn will begin to impact the fortunes of your organization. Thank you, Brad.
Yeah, no, thank you, Manuel. Very thoughtful outline, and I think one of the common themes that I would weave to what you're describing is sort of this leadership with purpose, self-purpose, and giving to others, this sort of virtuous circle. So thank you for that. I want to go to Temi now, and again a bit more on the leadership side. One of the things maybe we've alluded to, but we haven't addressed directly, is this idea of leadership and decision making. Do you think, Temi, that leaders, is it still the role of the leader to sort of be the decision maker, or are there perhaps different models of decision making that are evolving with the changing nature of organizations? Temi, are you mute?
Yeah, thanks. I think Neil, in the last session that just concluded, Neil actually had a concluding statement around leadership and how the new Gen Z, Gen Y take to or react to how when someone tells them you have to do this. I mean, in this day and age, like Emmanuel has also said, I mean, with my children, I have 2 girls, I'm a single mom, and I find that when I tell them not to do something, it becomes, I mean, my 5-year-old is asking me why, and I'm wondering, did you just ask me why? I mean, it's very, very, that is how they think. They want to understand, okay, even if you want me to do this, why are you telling me to do this? They want to understand that reason behind it. So that already speaks to, like we said, generations, the newer generations are more agile in their thinking. They're not docile or easily accepting of instructions. So in however way you want to call it. So there was a research done by O.C. Tanner. % of employees report that their leaders know what they do. And in this case, it became a very, very frustrating environment for these employees to say, I mean, this guy tells me to do this, but he basically does not even have an idea of what I do. And that is the way our youth are thinking these days. They're like, you guys are making decisions at the top. We below do not understand how you came to those decisions. And it's not easy then for them to buy into the ideology or into the strategy of the organization because they're also not part of into that thinking process. So for me, it is very, very important at every stage within or at every level in an organization that everybody has that opportunity or that window to contribute. And taking it back home again, for instance, I mean, it's as simple as even when it comes to what my children want to eat. In the olden days, we had a fixed timetable and we had to go. I mean, I can still remember everything I had Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, like that, but now it's a different ballgame. I have to ask my girls, okay, what do you want to have for breakfast? And they both have the different things they want to eat for breakfast, and the way they prepare, I mean, everything is just different. And that is the way we should take our organizations in terms of thinking, because one thing I've realized is that when you create that forum for every band level to be part of that thinking process, you get a diversity of ideas, you get different solutions. But if we leave the decision thinking at the top, then our ability to find solutions or to create new products or new ideas will be limited to that top.
Mm.
So, I mean, for instance, in my organization, some of the things that we've done to ensure that decision making is not just at the top, even for my level, even though I am globally in charge of HR, I can't start up a policy and just execute on it. I still need to take it into the senior leadership team, and they are going to give their own comments on it. Senior leadership team is going to take it down to the senior management team, and they're also going to give their contributions at the different market levels. So this way, you don't have a single pool of people just making decisions or just thinking up things. This has been cascaded down. I mean, yes, in a way, it sort of might feel frustrating or laid back for some people, like, okay, so I can't even decide on something and go ahead with it. But for me, it's brought, I mean, there's the Johari window that we talk about, whereby I create something, but I only see it in the perception of what I've created. But when you have other people seeing those blind spots you can't see, they help to flesh out those ideas. They help to pinpoint things that you don't know. I sit down at QBRs. I sit down at management meetings, and you find that even the person you underestimated the most, who is in maybe a credit department, is actually able to contribute to a financial problem, or is able to contribute to the CX, the customer service problem. But that's because that person was included in that process or in that meeting. If that is not done, then you find CX solving just CX problems from a CX point of view, rather than getting different perspective, because these are other departments that also relate with other people. So we've addressed ensuring that decision making is not just at the executive level, but at all levels, by ensuring that when we have our offsites, we have offsites where it's not just the senior management team, but the senior leadership team also is part of that. The middle management team is also part of that. And it also gives them a visual of what is happening in the company. Because sometimes as HR make decisions like, we can increase salaries, or we can do bonuses this time around, people are frustrated. They're like, I'm working, so why won't I get the salary increases? Why won't I get these bonuses? But when they become part of this management discussions and they see actually the real numbers and what is happening, they're able to then understand, oh, this is the reason why we can't do this now. And they are taking this back to their team to say, this is what we need to do to ensure we meet our targets, so that we can then get the so-called bonuses or salary increases that we want.
That's so true.
So that pretty much is how we've done it. Part of our, I mean, even with our succession planning for our high potential employees, we always ensure that once we identify people that are critical successors for certain roles, when we are having our senior management meetings, we ensure that at least once in a while they come into those meetings, so that they get a feel, understanding of how we think. It molds how they think. They also get to understand some of the decisions we're making. They are also part of those decision makers, and then they can take it back to their team, and then they also create the same level of decision making at that bottom. But I mean, that is really the best way for organizations to evolve as a learning organization, because the person at the front desk can probably give you that eureka moment idea that would change the dynamics of things, rather than just leave.
You remind me of the word that I've heard in different contexts, where the voice, giving people a voice. And what I hear you saying is a combination of giving people a voice and inclusion in the decision making as it relates to the culture and leadership. And I think that's wonderful insight. I'm going to ask Dr. Anil now, and I'm also mindful that our timing for all of the panelists, if I can try and remind everyone to sort of keep their answer to maybe 2 minutes or less for the second round of these questions. So Dr. Neil, I'm going to double up with a question on you on culture. I know at the outset you mentioned culture quite extensively, and so I've got a two-part question for you. We're obviously in very challenging times right now, unprecedented times, and culture and empathy. How does this impact, and it kind of relates to Temi's question as well, or answer in terms of decision making. How does it impact decision making? And do you have any case studies, examples that you can share with us in terms of this cultural impact?
I think that's a great question, Brad. So personally, I believe in the entire culture transformation journey, there are a couple of steps which are very, very important. And we had gone through similar kind of a phase. It's very fresh in my mind, and hence would love to share that. Number one, everybody, we need to identify if everybody in the organization are aware of what constitutes an organizational culture, be it in the form of values and be it in the form of your ways of working and blah 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 other stuff. Once people are aware, then the important piece is, do they internalize those values? Do they see some sort of an alignment? I might have my own set of values which are non-negotiable, and the organization is expecting me to drive a specific set of behavior, and how do I marry both of that? That is second challenge. Number third, if I have internalized, if I have agreed that yes, this is what culture means in a specific setup, what is that I am doing every day and in each and every way to demonstrate those values? That is very important. Me only being aware and internalizing those values is not enough. I need to demonstrate those values on the ground and every day. And fourth thing, in my experience, I have seen consequence management is very, very important. Now, as an organization, what is that we believe we should be doing when people live those values? And what is the consequence if people are deviating from those values that we believe will build an organization? So that consequence management is very important. And normally people ask, irrespective of rank and file, people normally have this question that what's in it for me? So if we can tie it up to the entire employee life cycle, starting from the talent acquisition process, starting from, let's say, the performance planning stage, reward and recognition stage, or the promotion or succession planning stage. If we can tie it up to the entire employee life cycle, then people tend to make sure that their thought processes are streamlined and unidirectional. So that is one thing that we have realized, that in the entire culture, talking about the unprecedented time, there are 3-4 C's which is very, very important, I strongly believe. Number one in that scheme of thing is communication. To what extent we share our thoughts, we communicate with a larger audience. Do we do that proactively? Do we keep them posted about the business scenario all around us? So the more you communicate, the better you are geared up to handle that change management process. Number two in the entire scheme of thing is the compassion, being more empathetic towards the minds, towards the kind of mindset that people would really go through during this transition phase. Third one, and very, very important to my mind, which I have seen right now, is called organizational catharsis. Catharsis is an idea of allowing people to vent out their anxiety, their anger, their frustration. So do you enable your managers to allow people, listen to them patiently, and then manage the entire process? Then probably if you can do that through catharsis, then definitely probably the conflict or or probably the unpleasant situation can be controlled up to a larger extent. So these are the quick top of mind thoughts that I had. I thought I must share it with the participants. Over to you.
Thank you so much. And this, one of the expressions that you use, consequence management, I personally, that resonates with me so deeply. The idea that part of what we do in HR and leadership roles is it's not just coaching, it's not just being empathetic, but this idea of both role modeling and also educating preemptively the workforce in terms of, I think it ties back to several things that some of the other panelists have said as well. I'm going to ask Nanda now to just, if we start to look forward, we've done a lot of reflection now in terms of this discussion so far, but looking forward, are there any conventional myths that need to be let go? And you could flip it the other way, is how should we be acting in the new normal that we've entered into? Nanda?
Yeah, Brad, I think, clearly, I think one of the biggest myths that is getting busted is that you don't need to have an office to get work done. I think that's the biggest learning I think we have all understood. And while always we have had this difficulty of and arguments as to why we need an office, I think when we were pushed against the wall, most organizations migrated to it in about 2 to 3 days time. They did have difficulties, but I think they all managed to get it done. And so today, you've gone to the other extent where organizations are asking, should you really need an office full time going forward?
Yeah.
Maybe you can work. I think that's I think the biggest myth that's got really busted in this current scenario.
Yeah, it's and I think it's one of those, like what our panelists have discussed so far. We're rethinking a lot of what we thought were workplace norms and challenging things, and we've been disrupted into some of these things, and I think that's where it's fair to say that the new normal is the equilibrium that we're all experiencing in our own personal lives, in our work lives, and our communities in terms of our different roles. Komal, I was thinking earlier as you were talking about your initial comments on culture and psychological safety. There's this expression that came to mind. Peter Drucker once said, "Culture eats strategy for breakfast." And I wanted to get your thoughts on how that expression and that concept applies to the world of work today.
Sure. And I would definitely second that, that culture does eat strategy for breakfast and probably lunch and dinner as well, maybe even snacks. I think, I've seen this play out in my personal experiences as well, that how that happens can also be very different from one place to another. I've been fortunate to have actually worked in across regions. So while I partner with APAC in India today, I've actually worked with Southeast West Africa as well in the past. I've also been fortunate to have traveled to almost 60 countries in my personal space as well, just because of my love for traveling. And I've seen that how culture accelerates people can be very, very different from one place to another. So one glove definitely does not fit all. Where I feel culture does eat strategy for breakfast, and why that's so true is because without that cultural alignment and without people feeling the same way about things, strategy can absolutely fall flat, right? We've all sort of in this panel acknowledged the fact that the say-do ratio and the role modeling that leaders bring to the forefront is extremely crucial in the way that culture plays out. And the way that culture plays out is extremely crucial in how people's potential gets tapped. It's the difference between someone feeling that, okay, I'm willing to do everything that the organization asks me to do, versus feeling that I'm going to do everything that it takes to make my organization successful. And that's what organizational effectiveness really boils down to, about helping people untap that collective potential that culture can bring to the forefront. It's the true, I love the word that you use, the equilibrium, right? It's culture is the true sort of equilibrium creator, I think, because if you think about theories and sort of, intelligence, for example, right? How does a sense of purpose really play out in accelerating potential? How does rallying with the message at the top play out in terms of accelerating potential? How does creating a brand of leadership of how people are able to bring themselves to work? All of these organizational intelligence factors are very much present in how culture takes place in the organization. And that's where I feel that when we talk about culture, having people see what's in it for me, to the point that Dr. Anil mentioned, it's extremely important. If I don't truly believe that me and the organization, we see eye to eye on a lot of things, if I don't truly believe that, somewhere I'm going to do the work, I'm going to do, you know, whatever's asked of me, but I'll not be tapping into my full potential, and I will not be at my most effective best. And that's where I feel culture does eat strategy, you know, for breakfast, for dinner, because without that, you know, everything else will only be subpar. It's when, and culture is that differentiator between something being good versus something being its most effective.
Yeah, very sound
Brian,
right.
to interrupt,
Yes,
apology. We're just running out of time. I just wanted to request, with your permission, Brad, if you can help. Because there are too many questions, we may not have enough time to answer them. If I can request you or the panelists to please log on to the app and try and answer them for our audience, please, because there are just too many, and I am sorry won't be able to take them all online.
No, that's perfect. With the panelists, Shri, that I don't want to speak for the panelists, but we've covered the essence of what everyone wanted to cover. So I'm glad for that, and I appreciate that. We certainly have to be cognizant of the time, and if the panelists can log into the app to address some of the questions that might be in their specific domain, that would be appreciated. Yes.
Great. And if you would give me just a couple of minutes,
take it.
You know, just to say, first of all, thank you very much, Brad. Done a great job, as I always do. You have done right from the first edition of HRM Summit. You've been the one constant that we have always had, and to talk about a new word, well, not a new word for me, but at least a new word in the current context that you used, which is equilibrium, which is, I think, is the one thing that all of us are trying to achieve in our own ways, whether we are leaders of organizations or of families or of employees. I mean, I think the line does not exist anymore, in my very humble opinion, at least during the current period. So I think that is, for me, a personal takeaway, because it hits the nail on the head. And I think to also thank Mr. Dr. Ranil Komal. You've been very eloquent, and thank you so much for your something new that I learned personally, which is living at home, or sorry, living at work. So that was a nice one. Thanks a lot, Mr. Nanda, Emmanuel, and Temi. Fantastic panel, and I thank you very much, everybody. I'm sorry we're just completely out of time, because people do need a break. And as you know, Brad, it's Temi as well as Manuel. It is about lunchtime in India, and the next panel is about to start any time now. So that's why I had to wrap it up. And thank you very much, guys, for your contribution. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Shri, and thank you to all the panelists. Thank you so much.
Thank you, too.
Thank you, Shri. Thanks, everyone. Thanks, Brad.
Thanks, everyone. Thanks, Brad.
Thank you.
Cheers. All right.
Bye.
Bye now.
Bye. Bye, Brad.